Hello, guys. This is KJ. This is a deep dive on Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 of The Rain. I hope you guys are following along with me and enjoying this, series a little bit. But anyway, I am about 14% into the book. So far, I am really enjoying it. A quick summary of what happened in Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Ruby is kind of again seeing Casper slowly turn into something that's not quite him. And Zach's mom, as she's driving them to the hospital, is also slowly turning into something that's unfamiliar. And we don't really know for sure if it's just because of Ruby's state of mind of being panicked, but she does mention that she does see blood on Zach's mom. It kind of looks like she's kind of in an itchy state. And Zach's mom is literally telling Ruby in the car, do not touch, do not touch the handle, do not touch anything that has rain on it, do not open the window, that kind of thing. And also, traffic jams, usually when post things are going down, people are panicking. That's also happening. Even though these people were told to stay inside, they do the direct opposite, which that happens all the time in dystopian for some reason. Then finally Ruby gets home. Zach's mom drops her home, and Ruby is suddenly shunned because at the beginning of the book, Ruby has a whole bunch of makeup on her face, and when she was kissing Jasper in the tub, the makeup around her lips got very messy and very, yeah, it was just kind of gross. And so instantly when she gets home, her parents, specifically her stepdad and her mom, are kind of panicky. They're like, hey, get into this side room, which is implied to be the stepdad Samuel's man cave ish, maybe, or a general guest room. Ruby is finally putting the pieces together, and she's kind of panicky, and she's kind of like, hey guys, don't isolate me because I didn't touch anything in the rain, I didn't do whatever. And actively her mom and her stepdad are pushing her away because they're like, we don't know for sure if you haven't been touched by the rain, we protect ourselves. Basically all of that's going down, and Ruby officially, when she is locked into the room, she has a crash out. She's throwing shit. She's spiraling because it finally, there's pieces that are kind of clicking in her brain. And all while this happening, she's like, oh my god, I lost my phone, I don't know where I put my phone. And yeah, so things are slowly kind of becoming reality to Ruby, and I feel like chapter 3 and chapter 4 is kind of emphasizing that everything is slowly becoming reality and not really much of a game. So the characters that we're introduced to in these chapters are Ruby, Zach's mom, Sarah, which we already know them from the previous chapters, but really kind of the new the new characters of this chapter is Ruby's mother and Henry, which is Ruby's brother. I believe, from my understanding, it's not Samuel's or Simon. My bad. Simon's son. It's somebody else's son. It's the family tree is a little confusing to me, but all I know is Simon is not the father, or he might be the father of Henry. I'm gonna have to check into that, but I will let you guys know on the bottom if that's true or not, because I got to do a little bit more digging and a little bit more rereading. And then we have Mrs. Fletcher. And then we have Simon, who is Ruby's stepdad. So Mrs. Fletcher is their neighbor that's introduced. I was saying Ruby's kind of crashing out most of the time in these 2 chapters. Really, in the last chapter, she's crashing out. And she mentions a lot about her mobile, which is, I had no idea that's like a British like slang for like phones, I guess. I don't know. I guess I wouldn't call it a slang. I would say a word, because you know how they, like, we have color and they have like, they spell color differently and all of that stuff. Yeah. So British English. And she's mentioning it multiple times. And I feel like, you know, reading this, there's a possibility that Ruby is more upset about losing her phone than everything else around her a little bit, even though that everything around her, everything that's happening around her feels like unsurreal and feels confusing. I think just the simple fact of losing something that was really hers, that she valued, at Zach's house, she mentions it like 2 times, and it's like in bold, you know, uppercase. So I would say, you know, it's definitely playing into her confused state of mind. Even then, you kind of like see before bed, Ruby is locked in this room. She's trying to use the computer, which Ronnie tells them in chapter 2 that all of the internet is basically down and you can't do anything. But Ruby has some sort of hope. She's trying to see kind of stability in, you know, the past society, um things that are familiar to her that came from the past prior to the rain falling. I feel like Ruby is a very reactionary character, and she has to be, you know, because again, everything is unknown. There's fear, and then there's confusion, and then just seeing her crush, who was like practically the center of her world like 2 chapters ago, become something, not knowing what he's going to become, and almost having this like unfamiliar thing about him. And then like I said, we're introduced to Henry, and we see that her relationship with Henry is very like, you know, he's the youngest, and I like him because he kind of brings the attention away from me, and he makes it easier for me to be independent. And she explains that's how she got her first phone, because Henry became less, I mean, she became less of the obsession of her stepfather and her mother. While on the other hand, we are introduced to Simon, and instantly it's like something's off about their relationship to a degree. And Simon kind of like gives her lectures. We're introduced to him like giving lectures to her, which are, we'll dig into that later, about like doing stuff in the rain prior to the deadly rain happening, and kind of like lecturing her and stuff like that. So automatically you're like, okay, their relationship is strained. And on top of that, you know, her panicking while she's being locked in this room, crashing out, and her mom generally like trying to be like, hey babe, you have to stay in there. She's like, maybe we'll get you out tomorrow morning. And we could hear like Simon being like, no, we can't do that. We have to make sure that she doesn't have whatever is in the rain, that virus in the rain. You could see that the relationship is strained. And then, you know, her hearing Henry crying and her parents kind of like jumping into making sure he's okay. We're going to get into those lectures later. When I noticed some themes and some ideas, obviously survival, them having to push Ruby into that room because they didn't know who she was exposed to, and they didn't know if she was exposed to the rain. So that implies that in early chapters, there's speculation among the characters that if you were in contact with someone who's been in the rain, that potentially it's contagious. So there might be some, I feel like it's indirect confirmation potentially on the fact that like being around someone who's been in the rain might get you infected possibly. But I just talk also about the writing in these two chapters. Chef Kiss, I feel like it was well balanced because again it introduced us to a whole bunch of characters while maintaining this like state of Ruby being in panic, being terrified for pretty much her life and confused about what's going on around her, and then seeing Mrs. Fletcher kind of like banging on their door, like trying to ask her parents for help, knowing for damn sure, bleep bleep, that they can't help her. And in seeing Mrs. Gretcher kind of groaning and kind of like making these weird sounds that were similar to what Casper, her crush, was making, and questioning like why is she still here? Like they told her no, they threw medicine at her, like why is she still here? So it maintains the tension, and I like that. World building, I notice again commenting about the culture and how Simon and her mother's comments about the rain initially, and how there's kind of like this opposite effect going on where the main character is introducing Simon and her mother's character by talking about how they are initially in the old, culture. They were commenting about her frequently not wanting to be in the rain and or trying to, cancel plans, and then being like, oh, it's just a little shower is what her mother would say, end quote. And then I guess Simon would have more of like a sarcastic, more like, direct response to it, I guess I would call it. And just kind of like calling her dramatic about not going. He'll make like a statement about Winston Churchill being like, oh, if he saw the rain, you know what? It's a bit rainy in Europe. Let's just have Hitler get on with it. And like Ruby being like, hey, I'm not at war. So why are you using this analogy with me? Like this is just a lesson that I need to attend. And Simon being like, but we paid for it, so you're going and you begged for it. So that's kind of their interaction. And I want to kind of dive into generally my personal like feelings about this. Is I feel like it's weirdly moving a little bit because it's like you're seeing everyone be in survival mode but still loving each other. So like they're telling Ruby, they're like, hey, when we go into the room you need to back up. But they brought her, pajamas, they brought her some food, but they maintained distance from her. And so it's like you're seeing that, they still love her, but they're just terrified for their life. I would like to say there's a little bit of a connection from The Walking Dead with these two chapters, and how like Morgan's crash out, or he wasn't really crashing out, but he was kind of like going insane a little bit. Sorry, it's been a minute since I watched The Walking Dead, and that kind of reminded me of what was going on with her. So I wanted to end this deep dive kind of like commentary review session on chapters 3 and 4, and I wanted to generally get you guys's opinion, and no cheating, no looking up the answers, and no spoilers for the people who've actually read this book. What is you guys's thoughts on Mrs. Rutchford kind of like standing there after they threw her to medicine, drowning, and do you think possibly she's like turning into like a zombie maybe? Yeah, what are your thoughts? Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a good day.